Welcome back. We are now on to part 2 of our MLS season preview, looking at the Western Conference, major awards, and MLS Cup. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, please do so. Link is in the description. Let's not wait any further. Here is the Western Conference. The 13th place team in the Western Conference, I have Real Salt Lake. Maybe this is harsh on them. It's not their fault that they couldn't invest in the team. Currently, they're looking for a new owner. A lot of turmoil off the field. A lot of respect for the club, how they've handled it internally. A lot of their coaching staff, their players, really sticking through it. But on the field, they're still. I struggle to believe they'll be a very good team. They do have pieces I like. David Ochoa, the goalkeeper, he looked good in Olympic qualifying. Aaron Herrera is a solid young MLS right back. Justin Glad is one of the better, maybe more underrated center backs in the league. Albert Rusnak is a guy I still very much like and has best 11 potential if he can play up to it. And then Bobby Wood is coming in the summer, former U.S. international guy. I think everyone really loves. He just hasn't played at the level we all thought he could consistently over the past couple seasons since moving to Hamburg in Germany from Union Berlin. But I don't know. This team, I don't think they have that much talent. I don't think they have very much depth. They're going to have a lot of off-the-field issues again. They're still looking for it. They don't have an ownership situation settled. I think it's just going to be too much to overcome, and they're going to be one of the bottom teams in the entire league. Next up, we have another team I really don't get excited by, and that's the Houston Dynamo. They're nice and rebranded now. New logo, which I don't know if I love. But regardless, Tab Ramos, former US U20 manager, he's in his second year with the team. They made some fun interleague moves. They got Tim Parker from the Red Bulls as a center back, Fafa Pico from rivals FC Dallas. Houston, I don't know. I'm honestly just mad at Houston as a franchise because they should be so much more. They're in a big market. They have a pretty nice stadium in a good location. They have cool colors. I don't know. Houston disappoint me. I want to talk myself into thinking they're better than this. I really do, because I think Houston deserves more. They've won more in the past. They won an Open Cup less than 5 years ago. Darwin Quintero, he can still put up lots of stats. He was one of the leaders in assists last year, and they got better defensively, but at the end of the day, the talent just isn't there for them to really compete at a high level in this league, and I have them as one of the bottom 2 teams in the West. At the 11th seed out west, we have the Vancouver Whitecaps. I actually have a Vancouver scarf up there. I have above the Seattle one. You just can't see it. I actually went back and forth with Vancouver. I think they have playoff team potential, to be honest with you. I like Diber Caicedo, the winger they got from Colombia. They bought him from Colombia. I like Alexander, the number 8 they got from Brazil. He seems a very talented box-to-box midfielder. I think Lucas Cavallini will have a good year after kind of struggling a little bit last year. Christian Dahome maybe can do something for him. Michael Baldissimo is a talented young player. Don't want to forget about him. I'm a big fan of his game. But they still feel a year or two away, to be honest with you. I don't know if they have an identity yet. They still have glaring holes, particularly at the number 10. They tried several times to fill it and just couldn't. If they get that number 10, and if it's a top tier guy, maybe not Otavio, who they were linked with, but maybe another guy in a similar ballpark, they will push up the standings and they will really be competing for that last playoff spot in the West. I think they'll be one of the more improved teams in the league in the Western Conference in 2021, but currently I only have them at 11. We have reached the new boys, Austin FC, who I do not have making the playoffs in their inaugural MLS season. Austin, they've done a lot of things right. They have a good stadium. They've spent well, if not like the highest end, but they've spent well on their team. They have what seems to be a very good fan base already in Austin, which is awesome to see. They got a lot of moves I'm really huge on. Alex Ring to anchor their midfield, big fan of that. Nick Lima at right back, big fan of that. Thomas Pochettino looks very fun as like an 8/10 in midfield. Cecilio Dominguez seems to be a very fun, exciting, dynamic goal threat on left wing. Rodney Redez, a talented young winger. But with all that being said, I don't think this is a playoff team. They have pieces of a playoff team, certainly. but they have a big old hole at center forward. And while I do actually think Danny Houston could perform well this season, that's far from a given. And the depth behind him is even less proven than he is. And then at center back, it's a pretty huge hole. Matt Beasler was not a starter last year in Kansas City, and he's another year older. They signed a relatively unknown Paraguayan center back. I think he might be Colombian, but they signed him from the club in Paraguay that they got Redes from, and that Cecilio Dominguez was loaned to the past couple months. But those are their starting center backs, and those are guys. One of them has never played in MLS and is relatively unproven and unknown in the world. He could be great, maybe like a Jesus Murillo kind of level player that we just didn't hear about, and just comes in and be a high quality starter. We just don't know. And then Beasler, I just don't really know if I trust anymore. And with those holes at center back, a pretty average at best, it seems to be goalkeeper rotation. Andrew Tarbell is a functional player, if not necessarily high end. And then Josh Wolf, it's his first ever time being a manager. I don't know if I buy in yet. They could prove me wrong. Again, they have the pieces. They have several playoff pieces. At first I did actually have them in the playoffs, but the more I thought about it, the more I rationalized it in my head. I don't think this is a playoff team, but 2-3 years from now, they will be a contender in the West. That I am sure of. All right, the last two teams to miss out on the playoffs in the West are two league originals. The Los Angeles Galaxy, the flagship franchise of the league, and FC Dallas. I actually have Galaxy finishing lower, so let's talk about them first. They had a busy, if kind of quiet, off-season. They lost Christian Pavone, who was dealing with serious legal issues in South America. They didn't bring him back, and that's a very complicated situation. So they found another target. They targeted Kevin Cabral, a relatively unknown winger from the second division in France. That's actually the second winger they got from France. They got Samuel Grandisier, I think I'm saying that right, from Monaco in France. They got two wingers from France. Cabral is the designated player. He's the youngest designated player in team history. 5-year contract, so they have a lot of faith in this young kid. He hasn't done too much yet in his pro career. He is from the PSG Academy, though, which, even though it hasn't actually produced all that many first-team players at PSG, has produced several good players throughout France. So they will hope Kevin Cabral is a DP caliber player who can instantly improve their team and provide service to the guy who needs to have a better 2021, and that is Javier Chicharito Hernandez, the face of Mexican football over the past 20 years. He's the all-time leading scorer for Mexico. He's one of the best players from CONCACAF in the 21st century. He had a very bad 2020. There's no way to look at it otherwise. He is older. He seems to no longer have much of a future with the Mexican national team, although he does say he wants to play with them. We will see if he can put it together. I actually do think he will bounce back. I don't know if he'll be a Joseph Martinez level scorer, but I think you can bag on 12 to 17 goals for Chicharito. I believe in Greg Vanney, who came in from Toronto. He built that franchise from a dumpster fire to elite, and I think in a few years the Galaxy will be in that position. They could even make the playoffs this year. I originally, just like 10 minutes ago, before I started filming these, I had the Galaxy lower, and I talked myself into raising them up a couple pegs here. And that's really because of Greg Vanney. It's because I expect a lot of Chicharito. Jonah Dos Santos is back in midfield. The defender, Derek Williams, I believe his name is, from Blackburn in the championship and the Irish national team. He could be a stalwart at the back. Jonathan Bond, they got as a new goalkeeper to replace the very leaky David Bingham. So Galaxy, they won't be elite yet, but they're building a real team, a collective, and they have an idea. They'll have an idea under Greg Vanney of what they want to be, and I think that'll bode well for them in the future. As for Dallas, they have all that. They have their idea, they have a philosophy, they have a way they want to play. All that's fine and good, but I don't know if I think they're better than some of the teams ahead of them in the West. They could be. Obviously, they pump out so many youth players that have become very, very good. That's hard to say that they'll be a bad team, and it's hard to say they'll miss playoffs. But when your big money signings like Frank O'Hara, like Andres Riquarte, don't produce, there's a limit to your ceiling. While I do actually think Riquarte will have a better 2021, I don't really believe in Frank O'Hara at all. if we're being honest. And I don't know if Ricardo Pepi is ready for that. I don't think Jesus Ferreira is a real number 9, so I think they'll struggle to get goals at times. Paxton Pomykal, who I love so much, just can't stay healthy, and that limits their offensive capability and will really hurt their midfield. Tanner Tessman is a beast, and they have other guys, obviously, because Dallas is so many players, both good and more mediocre, that they'll still be competitive, they'll still be good. I just can't see them in the playoffs over some of these other teams, because with the injuries and the lack of production from the guys like Jara and Riquarte, I just don't see them in the playoffs in 2021. Now, into the playoff field of the Western Conference, the last team in is I have the San Jose Earthquakes. Matias Almeida's San Jose Earthquakes have been reshaped in the past 3 years. They are crazy fun to watch with Matias Almeida's man-marking style. They are so fast going forward. Judson is a defensive rock at midfield. He just wins so many tackles and covers so much ground. Jackson Ewell, I love so much as a guy who can play long passes, guy who can progress the ball forward. So I love their midfield anchor. JT Marcinkowski's their goalkeeper who's come in. I saw a stat, I think this was from The Athletic, that said they were like 2 goals per game better with Marcinkowski versus Daniel Vega. So their defenses look much better with that change in goal. They have some new pieces. Shofis Lopez from Chivas Guadalajara played under Matias Almeida, obviously, while at Chivas. He comes in to be the number 10. They still have Christian Espinoza, who I am a huge fan of as a right winger. So electric, dynamic, one of the best crossers. Just cuts down to the right flank, beats a couple man off the dribble, just whips in a ball. Love him. Cade Cowell is a young player. I think he's 17 years old, a forward. He's yoked. He is absolutely huge. He looks like he could potentially play on the wing, goes a goal threat, maybe as a number 9 potentially. If he starts to develop, oh man, who knows what's going to happen with them. They still have Chris Wondolowski, and while he's older, he just has so much just natural instinct as a goal scorer. He will be there to just soak up opportunities created by Espinoza, created by Lopez. They also have Eric Remedi, I forgot to mention, coming over from Atlanta into their defensive midfield rotation. It's actually really important if Judson gets injured or Ewell is away with U.S. national team stuff. Huge questions at center back for me. I don't really trust anyone in their back line, particularly offensively. And then the man-marking system has shown to have its limits over the course of a season. But I think the Quakes just have a little too much talent, particularly with guys like Ewell and Espinoza. And Matias Almeida is just too good of a coach, and their system just is too functional, really. Even if it can be crazy and hectic and wild, I think it's just honestly too good to not be in the playoffs. And maybe it's just because I want to see it that I predict it, but I think San Jose, they're a playoff team. Next, we've got yet another MLS original side, and that is the Colorado Rapids. Robin Fraser's team showed the last year and a half that they can excel without any significant financial investment from their terrible owner, Stan Kroenke, and they continue that trend. They pick up distressed assets, homegrowns from other teams, and they put them under Robin Fraser, and they've built a competitive, fun side. Kellen Acosta and Jack Price is a great midfield combination. Acosta, he's really gotten back to his FC Dallas best. He's pushed back into the U.S. national team picture, which actually might hurt Colorado. I think he'll be a guy who goes away to the Gold Cup in this summer and misses some time for that. It's a very good team. Andre Shinyashiki, good young winger. Jonathan Lewis, another good young winger. Eunice Nomley is their only designated player, but he is a guy who I think will have a big bounce back year. His first season was last year with Colorado. Didn't really produce all that much, but he's so good on the ball that I find it hard to believe he won't produce at a high level. They don't really have a number 9, which is a big issue. And some of these distressed assets, particularly Jonathan Lewis and Austin Trusty is another one I've seen mentioned, need to prove it. But their core of Acosta, Price, Lalasa Bubakar, Nomley, I think it's very, very good. And I'm a big believer in Robin Fraser. I don't think there's a way Colorado doesn't make the playoffs. At the 5 seed, we have the Seattle Sounders, last year's Western Conference champions. They have never missed the playoffs in their MLS history, and I expect that trend to continue for them. They have question marks, maybe more question marks than they've ever had. I mean, the season, particularly because Jordan Morris, their golden boy, their wonder boy, last year best 11 caliber player, he has an ACL injury. He's going to miss the season. They lost other key pieces. Gustav Svensson as a defensive midfielder center back. He was quietly one of their best players. He's now gone, and it's going to be a season of change for Seattle. A lot of talk of them going to a 3-5-2. They brought in Freddie Montero from Vancouver, former club legend Freddie Montero. I don't know what he has left in the tank. He's kind of struggled since returning to MLS with Vancouver, but regardless, the Seattle Sounders are just too good of a team, too good of an institution not to make the playoffs. I do think they will be more on the line than they've been in many, many years. They still have Nico Ladero, who's a top 5 player in the league. They still have Raul Ruiz-Diaz, who, even though he'll miss time with Copa America, is a top 5 striker in the league. Stefan Fry is a good goalkeeper. Yemar Andrade, the center back, is very good. Brought in Kellen Rowe, is the other acquisition they got, who's a guy, maybe he can play a bunch of different roles in midfield for them. And then Brian Schmetzer's back. So while I did have Seattle more on the line than most years, they're still going to be a playoff team. And because of their experience in the playoffs, they will be a threat for MLS Cup once again. With the 4th place spot in the Western Conference, I have last year's Western Conference champions, well, regular season top seed, Sporting Kansas City. Maybe it's unfair to say they'll be 4th after what they did last year, and they still have a lot of good players. Alan Pulido is a top caliber striker. Gadi Kinda is back as their number 10. They also have Gianluca Busio in that role as well. Talented. I think he's, was he 19 now? 18, 19-year-old American center midfielder. For me, it really comes back to the question mark at center back. They've really struggled post Iko Para defensively. They were really bad defensively last year. That's why they almost lost that playoff game to San Jose. They do have Tim Melia as a goalkeeper. He will save them sometimes. But I think questions defensively just outweigh what they produce offensively. And while I do think they'll easily make the playoffs, I don't know what their ceiling is, to be honest with you. I have serious questions about them, but they'll be good once again. All right, the top 3 in the West. First, in 3rd place, we have the Portland Timbers. They are loaded with top-end talent. They have their designated players, Jimmy Chara, brother of Diego Chara, as a winger. Sebastian Blanco, who's coming back from an ACL injury, but he was one of the best players in the league last year before getting injured. And Jaroslav Nijgoda. If they get those guys all healthy back, plus Diego Valeri, plus Felipe Mora, plus Jeremy Abobasi, plus Eric Williamson, they will be so good pushing forward. Plus, they brought in 2, I think, just better, plus more offensively minded fullbacks in Claudio Bravo at left back and Jose Carlos Van Rankin from Chivas at right back. I think they looked very, very good at times in their CONCACAF Champions League opener against Marathon. I think they have the pieces to make a run in that tournament. I think they'll be one of the better teams in MLS. I do still have questions about Valeri and Chara's age. They haven't really slowed down all too much, but at some point it's going to fall. I do have questions at center back. I know a lot of people mentioned how they collapsed in games last year. We'll have to see if Gio Salvarez and the team can have the mindset to really improve on that in 2021. But this is a very talented team. They are a trophy contender, and I have them as 3rd in the West. My last 2 teams in the Western Conference, I debated about this for a while, and I actually surprised myself because I didn't think that this is the way I would roll, but here it is. So I actually have LAFC as the 2nd seed in the West and Minnesota United top. It was very, very close for me, but ultimately LAFC, while they have the top end talent, they showed it in CONCACAF Champions League how good they are. They are very, very good. Carlos Vela is probably the best player in the league. Diego Rossi is a top 10 player in the league. They've shown that they can just get the best out of whatever center forwards, be it Musovski, be it, I think, Cal Jennings is the guy they got from Memphis in USL. Eddie Shigura and Jesus Murillo are an excellent center back partnership. Kim Moon Hwan at right back, the South Korean international, looks a very good player. And of course, they still have their midfield, but that's actually my problem, is that there's a lot of talk that Edward Atuesta could be out the door. And if he's out the door, that changes this team. They have guys who could replace him. They don't have someone who can do what Atuesta does. So if they lose him, I don't think they're the same level that they would be without him. But I do think they'll still be a top 3 team in the West. Hopefully they keep Atuesta. But really, it wasn't LAFC's weaknesses, to be honest with you, that made me pick them 2nd. It's actually Minnesota United's strength. I'm a huge believer in what Reynoso can provide His assist numbers were wild towards the end of last season, and I think they've gotten stronger in a lot of areas. They brought in a true striker in Ramon Abila Juanchope from Reynoso's Boca Juniors. Those two have a good chemistry already. I think anytime you bring a top end number 9 to partner with your top end number 10, it just makes it elevates your attack to an even higher level. There's talks about them bringing in a designated player left winger to fill in that Kevin Molino void. That's very important, obviously. They still have Robin Lod as a winger, and while he'll miss time, as will Jean Gregush in midfield for the Euros, they'll have those guys. They have Asani Dotson. I love their back line, and while they don't have Iko Para, I think they've proven they have enough center backs and guys who can fill that void. And then if Dane St. Clair is as good as he was last year in goal, which I think will happen, they'll be defensively sound. But again, at the end of the day, it's Emmanuel Elre Reynoso, and once they got Ramon Abila, I felt good about this. I felt it in my gut. Minnesota United are going to be very, very good. I do actually think they will win the Supporters' Shield. I think Reynoso will be the MVP. He'll be the assist king. Abila will be top 5 in goals. Maybe I'm just not thinking with my head here. I'm thinking with my heart. I'm thinking crazy. But I'm very huge on Minnesota United this season. I think they finished first in the West and LAFC finished second. Before I get to my predictions for MLS Cup, I want to run through some individual awards real quick. So I already said I think Emmanuel Reynoso will win the Assist King. I think he'll win the MVP. I'm a huge believer in Minnesota United. I love what I saw from him last year. There's a chance that he regresses back to more of a mean, especially without Kevin Molino, but I don't see that coming. I think the Argentine playmaker is just that good, that influential, that dynamic. He will be the best player in MLS this season. The Golden Boot, I actually think it's going to go to Joseph Martinez. I know I said Abila will be a top 5 in that category, but I think Joseph, he will get back healthy. And Atlanta, I expect to create a ton of chances this year in their returning to this high pressing system. He has the talent around him to just feed him the ball inside. I don't know if he'll be the 30 goal scorer he was, but I don't know if he'll need to be to win the Golden Boot. I think he'll get 24, 27, somewhere in that range. I think that'll be enough for the Golden Boot this season. Young Player of the Year, guy won't win the award, but he's my personal pick, and that's Santiago Sosa. Controlling the game for them, starting their breaks, winning the ball back. I think he's going to be so influential and play such an important role for such a good team that he will actually be the young Player of the Year, whether or not he wins the award. Now we've reached my prediction for MLS Cup 2021. There are a lot of things to think about when you're predicting who will win this tournament. One, I think it's very, very unlikely we will see a repeat champion. That's not a knock on the Crew. It's just this is a league that I think winning back-to-back, particularly in the playoffs, really I think winning back-to-back in the playoffs in any of the American sports is incredibly difficult. So I don't think the Crew will do it. MLS playoffs can be a very chaotic and weird place where you have to expect the unexpected sometimes. So as I make my pick, maybe I'm thinking too hard, trying to galaxy brain it a little bit. But this is what I've come down. In the East, the top 2 teams in the East in the playoffs will be Orlando and Atlanta. Now, they wouldn't meet in the conference final in this hypothetical situation, but I think the winner of that game in the second round will go on to represent the East in MLS Cup, and it's really hard for me to say who wins that game. I think that's going to be, I'm praying like crazy for a whole lot of reasons, not just for this reason, granted, that we are back to a semblance of normal by that point, because the atmosphere in either Atlanta or Orlando for that playoff game and how good I think that game would be one of the signature moments in MLS history. My heart says Orlando, but I'm going to go with my brain here. I think Atlanta will represent the East. I said earlier they could contend for a treble, and I don't think that will happen, but I think they'll give themselves a chance to win MLS Cup once again. I think they'll come out of the East. And then out West, I know Seattle's a threat. I know LAFC are on the brink of a title here. I know I have Minnesota winning Supporters' Shield, but I think Portland is a team that just knows how to win tournament games. They showed it in MLS is back. They've shown it in MLS playoffs past. And I actually think we're going to get a rematch of 2018. I think Portland's going to come through the West, and Atlanta's going to come through the East. I think we're going to get another rematch. Maybe this is Seattle versus Toronto Mark II, but I think we're getting an Atlanta versus Portland MLS Cup final. And who wins that game? So I think it's a tough call once again. I think it'll be another incredible atmosphere. Again, I'm super high on Atlanta, but I honestly think they're just not. I think their inexperience will hurt them. I mean, Santiago Sosa, I expect to be one of their key players. He's only 20. So I think the experience of Portland, Diego Valeri, Sebastian Blanco, Diego Chara, I think these guys, they get one last hurrah in MLS. I think they will win MLS Cup in 2021 over Atlanta United. Portland Timbers, MLS Cup champions. There you go. Thank you all for bearing with me as I run through my MLS preview here. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please follow us here at the Playmakers Podcast. We try and do weekly podcasts. I hope to be talking about MLS maybe in this format once a week as well. So please follow, like, and subscribe. Oh my gosh, I subscribed twice. I guess I really want you to follow. Leave a comment. Let us know, who do you think will win at MLS Cup? Who's going to be the MVP? Am I completely crazy for believing Minnesota United are going to win the Supporters' Shield? Am I crazy to believe Portland will win MLS Cup? A little bit, but that's the fun of this league. You never really know what's going to happen. You just have to follow your heart, follow your instinct. We'll see. We got games this weekend. Friday, season starts, San Jose and Houston. Minnesota United plus Seattle that day as well. Big game Saturday, big game Sunday. Thank you all for watching.